I procrastinate at an Olympic level. I can put off anything you got for as long as you want. When I die, there will be a long list of things I just didn't quite get round to. You know what I mean?
Hello, this is the Awardist on Entertainment Weekly. I'm Dave Karger, and what a pleasure it is for me to be here today with Bill Nighy, the star of the lovely drama Living. Hello, Bill. It's great to see you.
Good morning. Good to be here.
You know, this is a film that has played so many of the top film festivals, Sundance, London, Telluride, Toronto. It's finally just come out in the UK, and it's about to come out in the US. What has it been like for you this entire year to be doing promotion for it, but it hasn't actually been available to the public, and how does it feel now?
Well, it's been fabulous. You know, we've been invited to all of, as you say, all those festivals. We started out in Sundance. Unfortunately, it was virtual. I'd even bought a coat for the cold weather, but I didn't get to wear it.
Mr. Williams, a little on the frosty side, perhaps.
Not too much fun and laughter. Rather like church.
What is it up? Small wonder I didn't notice what I was becoming.
Dad, you all right?
It was slightly odd that no one, apart from people at festivals, had seen the movie yet. But now it's opened in the UK, and it's you're in a hit when you get phone calls from people that you were at school with or that you haven't heard from for 25 years. And my phone has been on fire, you know. So, and people in the street and all kinds of people. So it's and for a film where, you know, nobody carries a gun and nobody takes their top off, that's not, I did offer to take my top off, but they said, please can you put it back on? So I did.
Well, maybe there's a sequel with lots of flashbacks. And that can happen. Did you kind of fight for this role? Did they come and offer it to you? What was the dance?
I went for dinner with the great British film producer, or rather film producers, Stephen Woolley and his wife Elizabeth Carlson. And I knew that the other guest was Kazuo Ishiguro and his wife Lorna. And at the end of dinner, Mr. and Mrs. Ishiguro said, "We know what your next film should be." And I said, "Well, when you're ready, let me know." And about 2 weeks later, Stephen Woolley called me and suggested this was the suggestion, was to reimagine Ikuru by Kurosawa, which turns out was a long-harbored desire of Ishiguro. He'd always wanted to do that. And when he met me, that kind of pulled it together. So it was, I must have been very, very good in a previous life or something.
You know, it's so interesting. You mentioned Kazuo Ishiguro, who did the screenplay, and of course it's based on a Kurosawa film, which in turn was inspired by a Tolstoy work. And then you have this South African director, Oliver Hermanus, but it's a British set film. What do you view as the sensibility of this film? Is it British? Is it South African? Is it Russian? Is it Japanese? Or is it a bit of everything?
I think it's a bit of everything. Both Stephen and Mr. Ishiguro didn't want an English director. No disrespect to English directors, but because it was such an English subject, or not an English subject, but an English context. It's a universal subject. They wanted someone with a bit of distance on it, and we got very, very lucky with Oliver Hermanus, who'd never made a film outside South Africa before, and he has delivered something completely brilliant, and not least because he does have a foreign eye to some degree. He's familiar with London and England, but he brought to it, as you suggest, a different sensibility. And I think it's hopefully the themes are universal, and so is the movie.
If only to be alive for one day. But I realize it. I don't know how.
Do you think we should alert the police, perhaps?
What will the police care? He's a couple of hours late for work.
A couple of hours late for work. Who would ever have thought?
Have you seen this movie?
No, I haven't seen the movie. I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that question, really. But I was hoping to slip that one by.
You were playing it off like you had seen it.
No, I can't. Maybe when I'm very, very old, but I doubt it. I don't think I can't take it. It's a practical consideration. Trust me. You have to trust me. If at the moment everything is fine, people love the movie, and I'm fine. If I see the movie, all of that goes out the window.
Wow, you're missing out, Bill. It's really good. It's really good.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear you say that.
All
That's
right, fine. So that's as good as seeing it? All right, I'm not going to buy that, but all right. And now what's fascinating is that you and all of your fellow actors, you're all in the same zone. The tone is singular in this film. I'd be curious to know from your recollection how you all work together to really capture and be on the same page. A lot of it is in the writing, everyone calling each other by the surnames and all of that. But it really was more than that. How did you all work together to make sure you were doing the same thing, as it were?
Well, I think a lot of the credit for that has to go to Oliver, because he calibrated all of that, and he had the overall view, and he was the unifying factor in that regard. And you're right, the writing, it's great writing. I mean, Kazuo Ishiguro, who's a Nobel Prize winning novelist, didn't want to write the screenplay. He said, I don't write screenplays, I write novels. And Stephen Woolley cleverly said, well, why don't you write one? And if it's lousy, we'll go get someone else. So, he kind of tricked him into doing it. But it's a brilliant piece of writing, and the writing does persuade you into a certain kind of performance. It really does. If it's of a certain quality, it just instinctively you kind of you drift into behavior and a style of presentation.
It really transports you as a viewer to the early 50s. What was it like for you to experience that on the set with all of the crafts and kind of be transported into 70 years ago?
Well, we had a team of assassins in terms of Helen Scott, the designer, and Sandy Powell, the costume designer, and Jamie Ramsey, the cinematographer. But for me, I was, as you say, I was born into that. I would have been one of those kids playing in the playground in those dreadful shorts, and I was born into that atmosphere of the post-war Britain, which was people dismiss the 50s to some degree over the years because it was overshadowed by the 60s and as Keith Richards said, we went from black and white to color, pretty much when Elvis Presley sang Hound Dog. But anyway, I remember characters not unlike Mr. Williams, and that kind of absurd and bonkers formality that people required of themselves at the time, which is, I know, probably deeply unhealthy. The psychiatric establishment would certainly say, but there's also something heroic about it, and there's something funny.
Do you consider yourself a bit of a throwback? Are you the kind of person who says, "Oh, I was born too late," or do you consider yourself, more of a gentleman of the time today?
I think I hope I'm kind of the time today. I don't know. I mean, I can't keep up, and I don't really try to keep up. Yeah, no, I think I'm pretty much a person of my time. I don't wish to have been born any other time.
This man who until yesterday was living a shell of an existence.
And I so very much do not wish to do so.
The character that you play, Mr. Williams, is such a fascinating guy. One of his new friends and co-workers has a nickname for him, which is Mr. Zombie, and that kind of hurt his feelings and all of us in the audience a little bit. But he is a man who, especially at the beginning of the film, is somewhat sleepwalking through life. What was your way into him? What connection did you feel to him? Because that's certainly not how you live.
I'm no stranger to a sense of isolation or a sense of sometimes not wanting to fully engage with the world. But he, I feel, has been institutionalized in grief because he lost his wife at a very early stage of their marriage, and his personality, his personal style, his whole response to the world has formed around that loss. And there must be a degree of anger as well as a great sadness, which makes him reluctant to fully engage with the world, and therefore, the way he carries himself, the way he speaks is a sort of it's informed by a great reticence, really, to even carry on. And he's also been involved in a job. He's been to the same place every day for the last 30 years, and in a job in an institution which is designed to prevent things from happening. That's got to be grueling. So I suppose I just did the usual things of studying the script and learning the lines backwards so that I could give the impression of spontaneity, and tried to kind of imagine how somebody like that might proceed.
It is a very fascinating peek behind the curtain of how things get lost in bureaucracy, because you do work for the government, and just people are trying to get forms processed. We see how they just stop moving. That was an interesting kind of look behind the scenes for me.
Yeah. Well, anyone who's ever tried to get any sense out of an insurance company, I think it's part of their training. You know, he's not at his desk currently. I'm afraid he's away on annual leave. We might have to check the numbers on that. It's the end of the financial year. We might have to reappraise the situation. You know, all of those things, or even just not getting through. You know, it's almost like they're designed to persuade you to give up, which I think they kind of, even whether consciously or not, they are. They want to kind of just get you to pull the plug and say, okay, forget it. You know? But I mean, you know, I'm interested because I procrastinate at an Olympic level. I can put off anything you got for as long as you want. When I die, there will be a long list of things I just didn't quite get round to. You know what I mean? I'm interested in how that individual tendency, that personal tendency, not just of mine, but of everyone, which is the great corrosive element in our societies, how that's expressed in a society, you know, and governments are formed, you know, a large part of their work is making sure that stuff doesn't happen. We're all at it, you know, and it is, I think, from a, dare I risk the word, spiritual point of view, that is exhausting.
One of the loveliest things about you and your performance in this film is experiencing and hearing you sing as Mr. Williams, and it's this lovely Scottish folk song, if I'm remembering right. Were you excited about that prospect? Were you nervous and worried about it? Did you know the tune? What was the whole process there?
I was nervous about it. I'm not that confident at singing. I mean, I can hold a tune, as they say. You know, I sing around the house as long as my daughter's not there. You know, I sing in the bath like everybody else. But I'm not publicly singing. It's not my favorite thing. There's always something on the schedule. You look down the schedule and you think, oh, God, you know that. I probably can't do that. But actually, it worked very well because, you know, I've been required to sing in movies, but I've never been required to be any good. You know what I mean? I'm not supposed to be a singer. I'm supposed to be some guy in a bar singing a song, a drunk guy in a bar singing a song. And also, it's in terms of telling the story, it's when he starts to fall apart and allows the grief that he's been withholding for all these years to come out, and his fear of dying, obviously, you know. So, and there is something about singing that does unlock, well, certainly for me, my emotions. It's like when you're at a funeral and you're fine until they ask you to sing. And as soon as they ask you to sing, you fall apart because there's something about the act of opening your throat and singing and that just that is unsurvivable in terms of, you know, and tears start to form and you start to grieve physically. So that helped because because that was part of my responsibility in that scene.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about Emmylou Wood and Alex Sharp because they're so terrific. The whole cast is terrific. How do you think their characters inspire Mr. Williams, and how did they as actors inspire you?
Well, they were exemplary. I mean, they're absolutely brilliant performers, and everyone was totally committed to this because of the script. The script was of such great quality and inspiration that there was no ambiguity. Everybody knew why they were there. And Emmylou was, you know, sensational to do business with, as was Alex, and Tom Burke, who's a great friend of mine who also came in. That was a coup to have him come and play that part. And everyone was kind of, as I say, galvanized and brought together by an enthusiasm for telling that story.
I did take note of so many interesting turns of phrase. At one point, you as Mr. Williams say something like, I have rather gone to ground. And it's these very interesting, I assume, very British turns of phrase that I wasn't familiar with. I wonder if those were also of a specific time or if they kind of permeate contemporary British culture as well.
I have rather is a construction that you probably won't hear very often on the street right now. Although it's still around, it depends on which school you went to or what books you read. But gone to ground I think it's a hunting reference. It means the fox has gone to ground or something, I think that's right. Not that I've ever done any hunting, just for the record here, ladies and gentlemen. Ishiguro is fascinated by those kind of speech, those constructions, those speech patterns, and those, because they are, some of them are archaic. But you'd find a few people still employing those things around the country, probably.
Hugh Jackman hosted a screening of Living and did an interview with you. And I could tell from things that he's posted online, he was very, very moved by this film and by your performance. He even said something like, this film might change the way you live your life. I'd be curious to know if making this film changed you in some way, changed your attitude on mortality or the way you're going to live your life now.
Well, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Mr. Jackman for coming. It was a big, big deal for us. And his reaction and response to the film was deeply gratifying to me personally, because he's someone I admire tremendously. But yeah, like all of us, really, I'm involved in that project, the project being to try and make the most of every day you're in and to make the most of the life you have rather than some life that you think you should have had or that you're yearning to have in the non-existent future. And not to compromise today with dread of tomorrow or regret for yesterday, all that stuff. I mean, I'm now beginning to sound like a Christmas card, but it helps me, to continue in my struggle with that, with procrastination, basically, and with any sense of myself as not eligible for things. I'm very good at inventing myself as someone for whom lots of things are out of his range. And, and my whole life has been a series of sort of surprises. We go, apparently that's achievable. Oh, that's achievable. It's like that. I used to quip. Don't you hate people that quote their own jokes? But I used to quip that when people ask me about if I had a process or a method or anything like that, I used to say no. But in lieu of that, what I do is I invent a hostile parallel universe in which I'm just about to get fired. And that's a kind of joke. But it's actually sort of true too. So just so you know who you're talking to. But I'm working on that. And this film, the response to it has really encouraged me and emboldened me. I've got the wind behind me. How long that will last, who knows?
I really do feel like this is going to be a career-defining role for you. Do you welcome that?
I'm very happy to hear you say those things. Yeah. I mean, you make a lot of films and some of them don't really surface, and then something like this catches fire. I'm nothing but grateful. Yeah, I'm very happy about that.
Well, I think it's a wonderful combination of story, character, and performer. It's just great. I'm so excited for you. I'm so glad it's had this response, and what a pleasure it is to spend some time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, David.
The movie is Living. Please see it, and thank you so much for watching and listening.